In a land far east off the coast surrounded by beautiful water and filled with tall buildings, there was a city, brighter at night during the day. There was a king who ruled his kingdom. Some questioned whether he was the hood godfather or just another stereotypical statistic partaking in legal activities. Although no one ever questioned him as a father, he had 3 daughters. The oldest daughter was named Nisi. She was supposed to be a part of the family business, but she broke rule number 1. Don't get high off your own supply. The king sent her to the best rehab facility money can buy and visits her as much as possible. This made Sula happy. Sula was the king's second eldest daughter, and she was tired of taking care of business. Nisi and Sapphire. Sapphire was the king's youngest daughter. Some would say she was the most beautiful around the neighborhood. She was extremely careless as well. The king and the daughters were the only one with a decent home in the neighborhood. It was more than decent. It was an estate passed down by his father. They would once say he ran the neighborhood as well. Fall was here, and it was Sapphire's 21st birthday. Always aiming to please and give his daughters whatever they wanted, the king gifted Sapphire with her most requested gift. Sapphire thanked the king, her father, 1,000,000 times in one. She drove it everywhere, but she also, surprisingly, took very good care of the vehicle as well, which surprised her nagging sister Sula. Sapphire could never understand why she acted like she was her mother and just not a cool big sister. Enjoying her car every minute of every second of every day, Sapphire decided she was going to take her car to the pier to take some cute pictures for Instagram. Sapphire found the perfect view and parked her car, just a little too close by the edge if you would ask anyone else. Sapphire was holding her keys to her vehicle when she was startled by a nearby giant bird and dropped them in the water by the edge. No, 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 she screamed and wept, fell to her knees crying in frustration, watching her keys sink to the bottom of the water. She could not bear to have Sula say, "I told you so," to the king. I would not have gotten her a car at all. As she wept on her knees, she heard a voice. "Don't cry. I can help." Terrified, Sapphire looked around, but she only saw cars drive by and people walking. No one else. Down here. Sapphire looked down. All she seen was a frog with a funny little satchel. In the voice of a full-size grown man, she heard the frog say, "I can help you." He stated again. Sapphire couldn't help but to scream, and even though she was terrified, she felt if a frog could talk, maybe he could magically return her keys, so why the heck not? "How and why?" she asked the frog. She also thought the frog being able to speak was maybe some sort of witchcraft and was extremely skeptical. The frog stated he would retrieve the keys, but only if Sapphire promised to date him and be as genuine as possible. "Sure, whatever," Sapphire replied, but she thought to herself how she was obviously having some type of hallucination, and after the frog returned her keys, she would wake up from this nightmare. The frog dove in the water. When he returned to the surface, to Sapphire's surprise and enticement, she seen that he had her keys. As soon as she snapped out of shock, she snatched the keys and ran to her car in fear and scurried off, leaving the poor frog in the dust. After returning home, Sapphire took a long nap until she was called down to dinner by the king. Oh, Sapphire, my beautiful young girl, I made you a chopped sandwich, your favorite in the world." They all enjoyed a nice dinner. Sula teasing Sapphire, "I'm surprised you haven't wrecked that truck of yours yet." Sapphire responding, "Nope, not yet." And all of a sudden, they heard a loud bang on the door. Oh, Sapphire, you set my breaking heart on fire." Everyone looked around at each other and then directly at Sapphire. And they heard it again. more banging, and this time even louder. Oh Sapphire, you set my broken heart on fire. As the king went to the door, Sapphire said, "No, don't," and openly admitted what happened earlier that day, and also mentioned that she thought it was all just a dream. Way past a dream, more like an indefinite nightmare. She admitted to the king that if that frog was standing outside that door, that she had no plans on engaging in him intimately or romantically. Once the king opened the door and seen a frog singing the same sad tune that he was singing while banging on the door, he immediately looked at Sapphire and said, "How could you hide something as cool as a talking frog from the entire family? Come right in, frog." The king was surprisingly very kind to the frog and also looked at Sapphire and stated, "Once you make a promise, my daughter, to someone, something, you must keep it. That is the honor this family carries." Instead of taking in the king's advice, Sapphire sat disgusted and bothered the entire time as the frog enjoyed his meal and explained how much he just wanted to be a companion and romantic with Sapphire as she had promised. The king ended up taking the frog to a nice satin bed made especially just for him. Sapphire refused to after the king asked her, as she was just too angry about the whole entire situation. On the second night, Sapphire was so upset and infuriated about her father, the king, letting in the frog and him talking her ear off by the second day, she took the frog and threw him against the wall. You would think something like that would have killed the poor little guy, but it in fact did not at all. He then transformed into a beautiful king, to everyone's surprise. The frog's birth name was Prince. He was a prince of another powerful king in a city that the current king did a lot of business with, and he was ashamed and disheartened to hear that someone had put a hex on him and turned him into that gruesome frog. Sapphire initially regretted doing something so cruel to such a small animal based off of the premises of what she agreed to and promised as her king father had mentioned earlier. But she was extremely and instantly in love once she seen Prince. The next day, the two rode off in Sapphire's chariot Cadillac and lived happily ever after.